guitarist Louie Shelton on creating the classic, the iconic guitars from the Monkees' Last Train to Clarksville. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music. Last Train to Clarksville, to me, that is you created an intro which, no matter who you are, and even if the person is a young person and only has never seen a record in their life, even through osmosis, they would have heard that. Did you created that like that?
Yeah, yeah. That's everything I do is just like that. I mean, I I
That's
never like
insane. That's
prepared
crazy.
anything. It's like it just comes. It comes through me, not from me. I don't know how to explain it, but it's all just spontaneous. Uh, and I think part of that is because early on I worked a lot on technique. So any idea that comes into my head, it's instantly there for me on the guitar fretboard. I don't have to sit and say, oh, I don't have to fool around with it. It's just automatic. Uh, and it's from my subconscious. All of my playing is subconscious. If I tried to think about every note, I probably couldn't play at all.
You
It's
get out of
just
your own way. You get it sort
I
of.
just let it flow. Yeah, I just let it flow. And there's an emotional aspect to it because uh, it's just it's an emotion. It interprets itself through the music, and because I'm not just a technical player. I'm not a technical player. I don't know anything about modes and all of that other than our scales, other than a major and minor scale. That's about the extent of my, you know, musical vocabulary. So everything I do is strictly, I don't know where it's coming from, someplace other than uh, something that I had learned before or whatever. It's just a natural thing because I feel lucky that I have a natural talent, and I know I do because the guitar came so easy for me, and I see so many other people that struggles with it. It's just like when you're in the class and you people different people are reading in the class. Some of them it just flows, it's no problem. Others, they just get, it's really stumbling for them. So um, I feel fortunate that I have that natural talent and that I discovered it early and made good use of it.
1966. Do you remember? Was that an evening? Just one last thing about Last Train to Clarksville. Was that evening, morning? When was that? Can you place yourself back there?
It was an afternoon, and I believe it was at RCA Studios, which is no longer there. It was a big studio. But we had gone into a small rehearsal room, me and that band, which was Bobby Hart's band, and that's where we worked that tune up, and and that's where that idea came to me. We worked the whole thing up there. Then we went into RCA, and the only amplifier I had was a big four-speaker super reverb because I was just playing in clubs. I wasn't doing session work. So when I went in, I had a Telecaster and that big uh, four-speaker super reverb, and I'm doing the intro to Last Train to Clarksville, and they kept saying, "Turn it up louder, turn it up louder." So I was cranking that amplifier, and it had four Jensen speakers in it, and it was really hard to get them to break up. And no matter how loud I turned it up, we never got any distortion. It just had that pure spiky sound to it, that they loved. So, but yeah, I remember that because for me, being in the studio was like a dream come true. I mean, even the smell of the recording equipment, the tape and all of that stuff. I can remember all of that. Yeah. And it was a big studio, RCA. It was, I think it was right there on Sunset Boulevard in Vine or somewhere around in there. It's no longer there. So much stuff has gone. Wallick's Music City music store was right on the corner also of Sunset and Vine. That's no longer there. But Western Recorders, and a few of those are still there, I believe, around Gower on Sunset. But most of them are not there anymore. But I definitely remember that day, and the fact that here I am finally in a recording studio making a record, you know.
That was your first big hit, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah.
I come from the school of you do the work that which helps you get into the room. There must have been times where, Louie, you kind of told yourself, I'm glad I did the work, because the fact that Voice and Heart came and they came to get you. I mean, and how many times, and that voice answering machine, they came to get you. And I'm overstating the obvious because I'm talking to you, but there must have been times where you told yourself, man, I'm glad I did the work.
Oh yeah, I did. The only thing that I didn't do was learn to read. I mean, I could follow chord charts and all of that. But I'm so fortunate that, unlike most of the other instruments, the arrangers would write specific notes for them, whether if you were a string player or a horn player or even keyboard player. Most keyboard players had formal training anyway. So I kind of lived in fear that one day someone would put notes in front of me. But luckily that never happened. So I just used my ears and these chords, and I listened to the singer. Where does it need a fill, you know, or something like that. I was always working on soloing or improvising, but lead guitar, anything that had to do with lead guitar, any style of music. I had everything from flamenco to Segovia to all the early jazz guys to the country guys, the Jimmy Bryants and the Chet Atkins. And I was like a sponge, and all we had was a record player where you had to sit the needle back and let me hear that lick one more time. And that's how I learned to play. But the thing that worked for me, and when I got into the studio, was my versatility, because it didn't matter if I was playing with Barbra Streisand, I could get a beautiful tone for that. If I was doing the Monkees, I get this more youthful Beatles stylish kind of stuff. You know, I was thinking about it. These session groups of session players, like when I call five of us to do a record, if you got a say a 10 a.m. start and you're doing a Neil Diamond record, you're supposed to be the perfect band for that. You're not doing a demo. This is his record. So these five guys have to lock in and be the perfect band for Neil Diamond. Your next session, after you break down and go across town, might be a Motown. So all of a sudden, you've got Marvin Gaye or the Jackson Five. You just got to start. Okay, now we got to be the perfect band for these guys, And then later, like I say, it might be a Barbra Streisand. So you've got to have that flexibility and versatility to be able to tap into whoever it is, because you're expected to be the guys for that artist, no matter how different they are from the ones you were in before. And but that was the strength, and that's the reason that the producers relied on so few musicians, because one musician could spoil the whole thing. You're in the middle of a beautiful take and someone has a clam and they got to stop and start all over. There wasn't any room for that. You had to really you know, be consistent and nail whatever it was that you were going after.
The only question David Page couldn't answer me is, what a fan had asked, what did you ever have to turn down? Do you ever regret turning down a session? And he says, I leave that with me because I don't know if I can answer that. And I'm going, really? He said, well, we made it work, man. They needed me, so I made it. And you said before, they changed the date sometimes because they really wanted you.
Yeah, because we took our bookings in advance, and so if someone called you for a session next week on a Monday at 10 a.m., well, if you already have a session with someone else, I was never. It was not a good thing to call these people up and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have to cancel that one because I'm going to do this one over here." You just couldn't do that kind of stuff. But if they wanted you badly enough, they would move their session. They'd say, well, when are you available? And they would book a session at that time. So there was a lot of that. Well, not a lot, but whenever that situation arose, that's how we would treat it. They would have to find a time when you were available.
We'll have more from Louie Shelton coming up in the next few days. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. Remember, we have a podcast. Links are in the description. You can help the channel. There's also links there and a list of all our other channels. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music.